In this video, I'm going to show how I use SPSS to determine if there is a statistically significant difference in district enrollment in regions 1, 2, and 5. First, I did a pretest checklist for number and normality. So when we look at the enrollment in region 1, we see a number of 72, which meets the criteria. However, looking at the histogram, it does not show a normal distribution. When we go to enrollment in region 2, we see a number of 66. That number meets the criteria. However, again, when we're observing the histogram, it does not show a normal distribution. When we go to value 3, which is enrollment in region 5, we see a number of 23. We know that the value of 23 does not meet the criteria. However, this histogram does show a normal distribution. Then I tested for Levine's value based on means. So when we look at Levine's value based on means, we see a significance or p-value with less than 0.001. We also see the degrees of freedom at 4 and the degrees of freedom 2 at 230. This also shares that the test of quality of variance was not met. When we look at the test of between subject effects, we see that there was a significance of less than 0.001. We also see an effect size of 0.081. This shows significant differences among groups. And we will get that information from the actual region number. We will scroll past the multiple comparisons at this time. This just shows all of the region numbers, regions 1 through 5. And of course, we have the descriptives. So when we go down to the test of normality, I created the Shapiro-Wilk test by analyzing the descriptive statistics. So when examining the Shapiro-Wilk test for significance, we see the following. In region 1, we see that the sig is less than 0.001 under the Shapiro. We also see the sig for region 2 at less than 0.001, but we see the sig in region 5 at 0.088. So regions 1 and regions 2, it confirms the histogram's non-normal distribution. And when we look at region 5, that sig of 0.088 confirms that it is normally distributed. So since the criteria were not met for normality, I ran a Kruskal-Wallis test, which was a non-parametric test. So when we look at the Kruskal-Wallis test and when we look at the significance, we see a significance of 0.007, which is less than 0.05. So this means that we reject the null hypothesis and agree that there is a difference between the regions. So we know that there is a difference between the regions based on that number. So we ask, what is that difference? So how do we determine that? We determine it by comparing two regions at a time. And so I did that by selecting data and selecting cases that meet a certain criteria or condition. So when we look at the enrollment of region 1 compared to region 2, we see the numbers 72 and 68. When we look at the significance value, it is 0.558, which was greater than 0.5, showing no significant difference in enrollment. When we look at regions 1 and 5, we look at the numbers 72 and 23. When we look at the SIG, it is 0.229, which was also greater than 0.05, showing no significant differences in enrollment. And then finally, when we look at the enrollment in Region 2 compared to Region 5, we see the numbers 66 and 23. We also see the significance or the p-value, which is 0.389, which again is greater than 0.05, showing no significant differences in the enrollment. So then we look at the test of homogeneity of variances based on the mean, less than 0.001. And then I read my ANOVA. So when we look at the ANOVA, we see the significance is less than 0.001. We also see the F value of 5.052. When we look at the degrees of freedom, between groups we see 4, within groups we see 230, for a total of 234. When we look at the ETA squared, that is 0.81. When we go down to multiple comparisons, we see that in regions 1 and 2, the significance is 0.470. When we compare regions 1 and 5, we see that that number is, once we move this, 0.411. And then we move down to the last comparative enrollment region, which was region 2 and 5. And we see a significance of 1.00. So the analysis that I have shared with you is summarized here in the assumption. So first, I filtered the data to only include regions 1, 2, and 5. Checking the assumptions, the Shapiro-Wilk test showed a significance of the p-value of less than 0.001 for region 1, a p-value of less than 0.001 for region 2, and a p-value of 0.088 for region 5. Since the p-value for region 1 and region 2 are less than the p-value, which is 0.05, the data is not normal. The Levene's test of homogeneity shows a significance of the p-value equals less than 0.001, so equal variances are not assumed. And then I proceeded with the ANOVA. And I assumed that there is a significant difference in enrollment between the regions. And in APA style, I report this as F value being 4. We saw the degrees of freedom as 4 and 230. And then also equally the F value of 5.05. The P value was less than 0.001. The number or the ETA squared was 0.081. And since the p-value is less than 0.05, we reject the null hypotheses. And again, the ETA squared of 0.081 indicates a medium effect size, meaning the difference is practically important. This concludes my analysis. Thank you.